Welcome to the Mizells Show.
An inspiration for a new generation.
Hi, I'm Alanna Mizells, a loving mother of two, a devoted wife to Steven, and an entrepreneur helping women realize their dreams and potential.
And I'm Steven Mizells, caring father of two, a devoted husband to Alanna, and a driving force to help young men prepare for life after college football.
And if that wasn't enough, we're a biracial couple.
She was raised in the North, but I was raised in the South.
The only thing normal about our lives, who am I kidding? It's never normal around here. Join us for the Mizells Show.
Right now.
Y'all, Steven is cranky.
Don't listen to her. It's hard working with talent. You are the talent.
I am. I don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
I am the talent.
You're the talent. And guys, I don't know how this podcast is going to go because Alanna has no beverage.
I have no beverage. Steven did not get me any more decaf coffee at the store.
I did not.
All I want.
It's a
and
nice
I'm a toddler, and I throw temper tantrums because I don't have what I want.
It's okay,
instead, I'm playing with the poppable under the table because that makes me feel better.
Got a little fidget poppable thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I am a toddler.
No,
okay?
Yes. Well, last week we talked about who or what is your Simon, and how did that go for some of our people, you think?
We had some feedback on, I don't know what my Simon is.
We did.
Like, why you don't know? Do you really not know who your Simon is, or are you not listening to who your Simon is?
True.
Are you trying to avoid?
Or people are just really trying to digest that and come to grips with it.
Or they're so used to having a Simon that they don't realize that's an alternate voice.
That's true. That is very true. Speaking of having a voice, we have recently, with school being back into the mix, have had a few people kind of reach out to us about our previous work history, as you would say.
Our first life.
Our first work career.
The fact that we're old enough to have like a 2 series of careers that date mine over 5 years and yours almost 15 years.
Over 15 years of experience.
You were at 14 years.
No, was
plus my 5
I
together.
I graduated college in 2006.
And you just finished in 22.
21. Whoa, bruh.
Okay, in 2021.
Well, we guess, technically,
so that's 15 years, Steven.
Yeah, 15 years.
Plus my 5. So about 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
Not including us actually being college students.
Well, yeah, because, with both of us, we actually worked in the realm of admissions and worked in those areas.
Yep.
So we knew about that. So we've had people kind of reach out to us about, still feel that we're pretty decently connected to the college admissions process and college and all those things. And so...
Well, and it's just such an unknown world.
When
you think about it, it's kind of like... It's how it is with parenting.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good point.
You hit each stage one time.
Yeah.
And that's it. You only have one time of a first birthday of your kid.
Yeah.
And then even if you have a second child and they have a first birthday, that's the only time that you will have an older child and the younger child is the first birthday.
Yeah.
You never do the same thing exactly again.
That is a very good analogy.
You really don't.
You don't.
You really don't. And so I think specifically with college, it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
It's ever growing.
And then every child that you might have go through the process is
it's
different.
So different.
Yes.
The child themselves is so different,
Yeah.
which means the schools that they're looking at, large in part, are probably going to be different. Each one of them has a different degree structure that they're thinking of going towards. And then not to mention, there's all the different options. There's college versus university. There's size. There's urban versus country versus demographic versus, male versus female ratios. Are we looking just at program? Do you know what program you want?
Yeah.
There's trade schools. There's
a lot.
There's so much.
There's so much.
And so we've had a handful of parents and a couple of students actually reach out to us recently.
Yeah. I'm just asking for just simple input to help navigate it, because in this process, of course, most schools have a college counselor that are doing their very best to mentor and to work through.
Yeah.
But that's a lot on 2, maybe staff of 4, depending on what the school looks like?
Yeah, it depends on what the school looks like. And I came from a public school in New England where we did not have somebody walk us through the college process.
Yeah.
Never. Not one time.
Yeah.
And like, there's no way I just like blacked all that out. Yeah. There's no way.
There's no way, yeah.
So, and I think that there are private schools that specifically focus on that. But even then, having the needed attention for every student just really isn't possible.
No.
And so Stephen wanted to walk through kind of the big buckets, the big bullet points that he challenges students to, really that you challenge students and parents to think of.
Yes.
Right when they just get started.
Or we get started. And so we kind of thought through, it's 3 principles or 3 things we kind of think about. Is when you go through the college application process, no matter what school you're going to, the first thing that kind of pops out is, who will you be through the college application process?
Yeah, so this is, you mentioned, no matter what college you end up going to, this is totally irrelevant of college or university or trade that you want to apply to. This is like, you're like, oh, it's junior year. I got to start to figure this out.
Yeah, junior year, senior year, you talk to the point of like, who do you want to be? Because these colleges across the country are, I hate to say it, but they're getting applications. They're getting applications. They're getting students to apply, and the application pools are growing. And so these schools are seeing 50, 60, 70,000 applications, and you're just one. So we stress to the parents and the students, like when you go through the process of narrowing down your schools, you have a top 3, a top 4, whatever you want to call it. A huge component of that is demonstrated interest. It's something that I didn't know about when I was in school. It was something that I don't know if Alanna knew about when she was going through the process. Because you have to put forth the effort to make yourself known through the application process.
Okay, so that's what demonstrated interest means.
Yeah,
you need to let the institution know that you're interested. And so as you were saying that, how there's thousands of applicants per school, what it really made me think of is like, you want to go be oh my gosh, I just blanked on what it's called. You want to go be an illustrator for Disney. Yeah, so does every other illustrator in the whole world. Like, that's a good benchmark, I feel like, because that's the epitome of people that want to be cartoon illustrators is to work for Disney.
Yeah, and
so that's what every college student is doing.
Yeah, and every college student is, like, you just name a school, like, every college student, well, not every, but almost every college student wants to apply to a Florida State, a UCLA, you call it, the name sounds appeasing, so they want to apply to it. Right. And I think a couple of years ago, UCLA saw 140,000 applications.
Right, and what does their admissions staff look like?
Yeah.
That's like saying, hey, there's one job posting, and there's going to be that many people that apply to the one job posting.
Yeah. And
like, that's it.
You're right. And
it's like, imagine the line when American Idol was happening, for the parents that still remember American Idol.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and you're completely true. Because I'm not watering down high school students' accomplishments, because you have to understand, in that 110,000, at least 20,000 probably had 30 on the ACT. Like, you know, so.
And okay, so for Memphis people, that's 40,000 more than the Liberty Bowl Stadium full.
Yes,
that's 40,000 more people. Okay, what football stadium holds 110?
UT Knox.
Okay, so the next time you watch a University of Tennessee Knoxville game, and it's full, that's the number of students that applied just to UCLA.
Just UCLA.
Just freshman students that applied to UCLA. So you're not talking about graduate, you're not talking about transfer.
You're talking about true freshmen.
True freshmen. So I feel like you've got to be able to visualize the capacity of that.
Yes.
And like almost like the roar that is coming into the admissions offices.
Yeah.
So what you were talking about is demonstrated interest, showing that demonstrated interest to UCLA.
Yes.
Or all of your schools, really.
Yeah, because if you think about it, out of that 110,000 that demonstrated interest, hypothetically, if you just take a trip to UCLA, so let's say you had the scores of a 30 whatever and a GPA, and you're there, and then you actually fly in and take a visit, you're probably then going to put yourself maybe in the top 40,000. Because a lot of those people are just applying, and they're never going to take a trip to UCLA. They're just trying to shoot their shot.
Yeah.
And so taking that trip to UCLA or whatever school is one thing, but I always stress to parents and students, make a connection before you get there.
Yeah, so you know who to talk to.
So you know who to talk to when you get there.
Yeah.
They know you're coming. So, oh, by the way, I'm coming on Friday, September 9th. And so you have not only somebody within that admissions office, and most schools will break down a regional map and say who's your contact person. And if they are not working in that office, at least you'll be able to find somebody to contact to.
Right. So here's my question. You mentioned some things that I think are just second nature to you because you worked in higher education for so long.
Yeah.
One of which is connect with somebody. Who?
Yeah. So most schools have what is called a admissions counselor. Sometimes they're called enrollment counselors. Sometimes they're called assistant directors of admissions. And these are people that their job, kind of like when I worked in admissions, is to go out and recruit students, to build relationships with students, to make sure that they're able to get all the information that they need to be hopefully a viable applicant to your school.
And you find their information on the website.
Yes, on the website. You go to, for instance, memphis.edu, you click on admissions, and Memphis has a pretty easy, it says find my counselor, which is your admissions counselor, and you literally type your state, and it will pop up, and you will say, Jessica Smith is my counselor, and then you would just send Jessica Smith an email to say, hey, I'm coming to visit Memphis, and I would love to sit down with you. And then if you offer that opportunity to sit down, you're shrinking that applicant pool.
Because you're putting a face and an interaction to a name.
Yes.
It's just like for parents, I think we've got to put it into tangible examples. So you've got this job that you're really pining for. Well, the first step is you go on LinkedIn and you find people that work at that company.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to just look at their profile. You know they can see it. Mm-hmm. And then you decide to reach out and have a coffee connection. Mm-hmm. There's no job open.
Yeah.
Because you haven't applied.
Yeah.
Right? These college students that are going to UCLA or wherever, even Memphis, flying into Memphis and meeting with an admissions counselor, haven't applied yet.
Yeah.
So it's essentially like passively looking for a position at a company that you really want to work at, and talking to, just casually having coffee with somebody to network with them. You were doing the networking piece that we were talking about in our last episode.
Yeah, you're right. You are literally networking, and you're making those connections and having that. So that's kind of a version of like, you want to make sure your student and you as a parent kind of make sure they know who they're going to be through this application process, and try to stand out some kind of way in that process.
So here's another question. You mentioned the student and the parent. Who should be emailing that counselor?
Oh, the student. Hands down, the student. It's like, it's a inside running joke in almost every admissions office in America that it's a parent that it's a parent emailing me and not the student.
It's noticeable.
It's very noticeable that it's a parent. Yeah, you want to hear from the student. You want the student to be taking charge of this process, and that separates applicant A versus applicant B that might be hand in hand.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean don't check over, make sure everything's spelt right, yada, yada, but don't change the cadence, anything like that.
Don't send the email from the kid's email account.
Right. It needs to actually sound like the student,
yes.
which means the student's fingers need to type that email.
No, exactly.
And I think that's a really hard pill to swallow from a parent's perspective.
Yep, I agree.
They've taken care of their babies, and now they're about to fly the nest, and it's one of the most startling things. You mean to tell me I'm about to pay thousands of dollars for my student to go to school?
And I can't control it.
Well, I can't be the one communicating when I'm the one paying for it.
Exactly.
And it's like, no,
you can't.
You can't.
And so the other part of it is even more, it's just as important, and you do a really good job of this, and you've talked about it in the podcast. You have the who will you be, and then you have what will you be. And the what piece breaks down, of course, everybody, if you be Oprah rich for every time someone's talking about social media in the application process. But social media still plays a huge part, and it's about the personal branding. Like, what will you be seen as through this process? So if you're coming to a campus tour and your mom or dad's doing all the talking, and then you know, you're like, oh, that kid, that mom is the one running the ship. Or are you that kid that, you know, doesn't say anything? And those speak volumes when you're looking at the applicant pool and helping your student have some kind of identity in the what piece.
Yeah, so I want to paint this picture because I did not come visit Memphis before I came here. I just came for orientation. And my mom she had already had my sister. She was not a helicopter parent. It was just my mom that was here. And I had seen some other students whose parents were like, let me go meet you for your advising appointment. My mom didn't do that. And I ended up meeting the man that was over the advising department. So I didn't actually meet with my own advisor. Yeah. Because the director of the department ended up having a conversation with me, and he actually helped me map out all of my classes. And little did I know, he would also, so that was at orientation. 2 years later, I was an orientation guide, and he was the catalyst to me getting an honor scholarship and still being able to stay at Memphis because it was about half as much as my tuition was.
Yes.
Did you know that I sell makeup? Not only do I sell makeup, but the makeup that I sell is 3D makeup, which allows you to highlight and contour your face in a super simple compact. As a mom, I could not survive without my simplified routine. Not only that, but it's exactly what you need. Exactly when you need it, all in one spot. Go ahead and check out Alanna Mizells on Instagram or alannamizells.com to learn more.
So that's just like, if my mom had hovered, I wouldn't have been able to make my impact on the director of that department.
Yeah.
And like, I can still communicate with him today.
Yeah. That's so important. And that's why when you step, because it's one thing to do the demonstrated interest, but when you leave that campus or you leave that email, what will those people feel or see about you?
Yeah.
Because we say this almost all the time, is that people don't remember what you do. They remember how you make them feel.
Which is a quote by
Angelo. And so that's something that you just want to help your student gain some sense of identity. I'm not saying they have to be the class president, they're at the front of the tour asking the questions, but just make sure.
And I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was not class president. I mean, I was up there on my high school graduating class, which is not important now. But I think the most important thing is I happen to be from out of state. So people remembered, oh, that's the girl from New Hampshire. But you have to create an identifying factor.
Yeah.
So just like if you were to go on social media, you see somebody, like actually today, Steven said, oh, go watch this girl on TikTok. She does skits of politicians but pretends like she's a teacher. Like she has so many other TikToks throughout her thing, but that's her identifying factor.
Yeah.
That's how people remember her.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's another great one. Why do people remember Kobe Bryant?
Because he's Mamba. Like
right.
Mamba mentality.
Right. Like, not that he was a Laker for years.
No, it's the Mamba mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Like he has an identifying factor, which happens to be the greatest asset that he had.
Yeah.
And so what is your identifying factor that you're going to hold on to?
Yes.
That is going to be the thing when you introduce yourself. Like when I introduced myself when I was that old, really even now, except people remember who I am. Hi, I'm Alanna Mizells. I'm originally from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Because there's very few people down here that are from New Hampshire. So what is it that is almost like your fun fact?
Yeah.
I'm Steven Mizells. I something.
Yeah. And then my thing is also take ownership of what you are right now. So if you are applying to Memphis or MTSU or wherever, and let's say you need to have a 3.0 GPA and a 21, and your identifying factor is, hey, I only have an 18, own that. Let them know you are working towards getting that next step, because almost every school has a probationary or a option to help students get in because they see the value in you trying. So you going to them and owning like, hey, I'm working hard to get my ACT or GPA up. And they're like, oh, I remember that kid. He was from so-and-so high school. And he's working hard to pull this GPA up, but I'm going to keep him on my radar. So like Alanna mentioned, it was a great point. What would be your identifying factor that will leave that mark when you show that demonstrated interest? And also one last thing before we go to the last point. There are some phenomenal tools out there, parents, that you should research to scrub your kids' social media. That will literally, you can type in certain negative words, certain profanity words, and it will pull up every tweet, every post, and you can then go back and delete it before that application goes in. Because you better believe
they're
Googling your kids, they're looking them up.
Y'all, there are now technology platforms that do that scrubbing. And you can put in all of your applicants, and it actually tells you the answer.
Yes.
So just like Grammarly and all these other things where it checks your grammar, well, it's going to check your social medias. Mm-hmm. And it pulls it up. You can put it in first name, last name, location. Because guess what? You've had a geotag somewhere in there that social media can now identify.
And you guys have had this probably since 10 or 11 or 12. And that's almost 8 years of mistakes that you never thought that would be there. So that's a little nugget that parents should really think about that.
The one last thing on that topic for the identifying factor. If you get the opportunity to sit down with an admissions counselor, make sure you're telling a story. People remember stories. And that's actually how you sell things. If you listen to some of the greatest salesmen in the world, what they're doing is telling you a story so that you cling on to the product and you get a level of hope. Yeah. That's how people are going to remember you. Yeah. Yes, they remember that I'm from New Hampshire, but they're also going to remember the story that I'm going to follow up with about my trip from New Hampshire to Memphis. Yeah. So if you don't have something that's just like awe-inspiring, I'm the class president, da-da-da. You know how many times they're going to hear I'm the class president? Yes. A lot of times. Yeah. I'm such and such. I'm captain of such and such. That's great. Tell me a story.
Tell you a story. And that's...
Why are you here?
Why are you here? And that's something that I'll tell the story at the end. But speaking of telling a story, another nugget that Alanna has talked about before is if you have a social media, yes, scrub it, get it clean, but also it needs to be public. Yeah. It needs to be public and tell that story. So, for instance, that kid that's barely getting into that school, that admission counselor goes and look at your Instagram and they see, oh, his GPA is not, but he's been out in the community giving back, volunteering. He's active in his band. Maybe that's why his GPA is not where it needs to be, because he's actually getting involved. Right. And his social media can now tell the story for you instead of it being private. And then you have to ask, it's awkward for an admissions counselor to ask for. They probably won't even ask for a request.
No, they won't. They just won't push you along in the process. Exactly. So if it came down between you and somebody else, and they actually know their story because their social media, they're just going to pass over you. And that's not saying go make a social media. No. Like if you've never had one, it's fine. Don't start now. Exactly. Now is not the time. Yeah. If that's something that you don't feel like doing, it is going to be blatantly obvious. Don't get addicted to it. Don't start now. But if you don't have one, remember, you have one less marketing tool. Mm-hmm. So that means when you meet somebody in person, you have to know why you're at that school. And that goes perfect transition to the last point is why. You have who, demonstrated interest. You know, the what piece is the personal branding piece, the identifying factor. And then last but not least, why. Like you have to have this gut-wrenching pull it out of a 17-year-old or 18-year-old. Like, why do you want to attend these three schools? And it's going to be painful. It's going to be hard. And they probably might not give you the answer you want. But you have to have that why piece. Because, you mentioned this earlier. College is expensive. Yeah. And it's not getting any cheaper. So you have to pull out something. You can't be like, oh, why? I don't know. And here's another news flash for you, for even past my generation. Most colleges have now eliminated the undecided major. They're forcing you to pick something when you get in because states and federal governments now are giving their federal funding based on retention and graduation. Mm-hmm. So these colleges, they want to see what their investment is going to be in you. They want to see an ROI. So you can't come in like, oh, I want to major in this and I want to change the major 5 or 6 times. Guess what? Federal funding is now dropping for that kid that changes the major. If you take classes out of your wheelhouse degree program. Yeah. And so I know it's hard to talk to some, teenagers, and we'll be there one day, but you got to ask them, why are you doing this? Well, and I think so. I guess my mom's getting a lot of clout on this episode, and I don't even know if she remembers doing this. She was sitting down going through my loans that I needed to be an out-of-state student. And mind you, it was less expensive to go to the University of Memphis than the college in my hometown. Yeah. So let me just say that for everybody who's like, well, why'd you go out of state? Yeah. Well, let me just tell you why. So
also met your husband.
I did meet my husband. That's, it's just step one of like the whole thing. But my mom sat me down and told me how much it costs per class. She said, just so you know, this is how much it's going to cost you per class. And she said, oh, by the way, that doesn't include interest. So I knew how much every single class was that I went to. And I don't remember it now. I just remember being in shock and like, I'm never missing class. You guys, in 4 years, I missed one class, and it was because of sorority recruitment. And it was because our chairs were being delivered late.
Yeah.
I missed one class in 4 years.
And that's the thing about it. Like, you have to, and again, it's a changing time. So just that why piece, because it's a changing education system right now. And yes, I understand the value of college. I went to college. I'm grateful for it. But I also, now being in the role that I'm in, and Alanna being the role that she's in, there's a value in a trade school. There's a value in going to electrician school. Welding. You have to understand why you are there. And yes, it's a great experience, and you will meet people from all walks of life, but just ask them, like, why do you want to go to school in Colorado? Like, you know nothing about Colorado, but you have to figure out that why piece.
And I think we've lived in this world for so long that obviously right after high school is just college. Like, it just is.
You just check the box. You're going to college. Yeah.
And it just can't be that way
for
every student. And the other thing that I did upon graduation, it was actually while I was at Harding Academy, I was asked to speak about my college experience and like how much it cost me. It was for the seniors. Mm-hmm. And one of the teachers challenged me to figure out how much it actually cost me a day in interest, because of the time frame that I graduated. It was 2012. I entered college in 2008, right as the recession was just rearing its head. And I hate to say it, but we're going to get pretty close with interest rates and things like that. Y'all, it was pretty close to me buying a grande latte from Starbucks every day. I wake up and there goes my grande latte like I just dropped it outside on the pavement.
Yeah.
Because that's what my interest looked like in college. Was it worth it for my undergraduate? Yes, absolutely. Did I need to go get my master's? That's still up for debate. I learned a lot, but I don't know that it was necessary. I do look back and I wonder, would I have felt more stable taking a year off? Would I have felt more stable going into a trade? Mm-hmm. I have no idea. It wasn't an option, really. It was never brought to even the table. And I think part of it for seniors is just saying, I know that all of your friends are going to college. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure that you're not interested in doing plumbing or electrical or welding. Because there is also a severe deficit of those trades in the United States.
It is a dying. Sorry, not dying. But at the end of the day, a lot of that industry is retiring off, and they're looking for.
Like statistically, they're baby boomers or baby boomers, which is the latter half of that boomer generation, and they're looking for apprentices, and they're not there because we've spent the last 20 years telling all of these students that they need to go to a 4-year institution. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is now they don't want to restart their life, even though welding or being electrical or in plumbing would make them happy.
They don't want to reset it.
You also make a fantastic living doing those trades.
Yeah.
Fantastic living. We were actually talking to Steven's sister, who's a structural engineer, and she's like, do you guys know any welders? Like anywhere. I'll move them. They don't even have to move. I'll figure it out.
They need them.
She's like begging. We were actually telling her about one student that just graduated, and he's going to welding school. Mm-hmm. And he was so afraid to tell Steven and I.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said it, we were like, I am so proud of you.
Yeah.
And I actually know there was 2 other students that took a year to do some internship kind of environment in theater just to see if it was something that they wanted to do. One was in theater and one was in the arts. One was in New York and one was in California. And they took the year. They learned so much about themselves because it's the first time that they're away, and then they don't have to worry about school.
Yeah.
And they worked full time. Like, they didn't miss out on making money or anything like that. But now their college experience, they've both chosen to go to 4-year institutions, but now it's going to be a different.
Yeah.
And I know that that's 1 year off from the people that they're starting with, but how much more worldly knowledge are they getting?
Yeah, and if you take that, and that's the thing about it, like, people say, oh, I want to do a gap year. Why? Like, what are you going to do in that gap year? If you're going to go boots on the ground and experience a new city and you're going to work a job, okay, I get that. And I understand that. But, like, the whole premise of a gap year, the whole premise of even going to college, because some kids take a gap year in their freshman year of college.
They do. It just costs them more money. They ain't making anything.
They're not making anything. So that's just, we wanted to drop these nuggets. At the end of the day, you're going through this process. we are an open book, and if you want to reach out to us to get some help or to help you navigate this,
or if you want us to have the conversation with your college student, we are more than happy to do that. It will probably get very uncomfortable for them because we will ask all those questions that we just mentioned and not be afraid to ask them.
We will not.
So, fair warning.
Yeah. So just remember the who, the what, the why of this college application process.
So the who is who you're trying to find before you go.
The what is
your identifying factor. And then why. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Why are you going to college?
Why is the student going to college?
Yes.
Not why do you want the student to go to college. This is not your journey, parents.
We appreciate you guys. Thanks.
So if you guys are enjoying this, definitely leave us a review. Give us the feedback. If there's something you guys want us to talk about, reach out to us on our website at themizellsshow.com. There is a contact section. You can put it in there. We would love to hear about it. Or you can always go over to Instagram at The Mizells Show. Also, as always, don't forget to screenshot this episode and just add it to your stories and tag us on Instagram, on Facebook at The Mizells Show. Thanks, guys. Are you loving The Mizells Show? Well, we love you all. And did you know that you can have me and Steven talk to your team or a group of 25 of your friends? All it takes is 25 people showing up on either a Zoom call, a Facebook Live, or really anywhere. Hopefully in person sooner rather than later. But how do you get us? So all you have to do is email themizellsshow@gmail.com, or you can direct message us on Instagram at The Mizells Show.